Hi, it's Kyle Bachus again. I want to talk to you about a topic that we get a lot of questions about, and that is when I'm in a collision, who pays my medical expenses? And here's the answer. At the end of the day, the at-fault driver is financially responsible for all of the consequences of causing a collision. And that includes reasonable, now you gotta remember that, reasonable medical expenses, okay? So as a starting point, your treatment after a collision has to be reasonable, both in scope and in cost of care. And if that happens and it's reasonable, the at-fault driver ultimately is responsible. However, this is a very important point. The at-fault driver is going to pay for those medical expenses as part of a one-time lump sum settlement that occurs at the very end of your case. A one-time payment. And that's going to be paid out to you, assuming we can prove negligence and who's at fault and that they owe it to you. They're going to pay one time in exchange for your signature on a release, releasing their driver of any further responsibility. So it raises a big question. Who's going to pay my medical expenses in the short term? Okay, I need medical expenses now. I can't wait to the end of my case to pay for my medical expenses. Who's going to pay for them in the short term? And in the short term, there's several different insurances that you may be eligible for that you purchased yourself or that were purchased on your behalf that can provide coverage for your medical expenses. Health insurance is a prime example. And we kind of have a hierarchy of which payers of medical expenses we prefer to use. Now keep in mind, at the end of the day, even though your health insurance or other insurance might pay for your medical expenses in the short term, at the end of the day, we're going to collect that money from the at-fault driver, and we may have reimbursement obligations to the insurance that paid in the short term. And that's part of our hierarchy, right? Because there are certain insurances that have a right to be reimbursed out of your settlement and others that don't. In all instances, we get to recover your medical expenses, even if they were paid in the short term. We get to recover them from the at-fault driver. So we want to recover as much as we can from the at-fault driver and pay back as little as we need to pay back to the various, what I'll call first payers of your medical expenses. So medical payments coverage is on your automobile insurance policy. It's a voluntary coverage. You don't have to have it. About 50% of the people who have it, it usually comes in a $5,000 increment or a $10,000 increment, and you get that. If you have that on your own auto insurance policy, we can use those medical payments coverage on your own policy. And the good news there is if you use $5,000 on your own policy of MedPay on your car, and we get to recover that $5,000 from the at-fault driver, but we do not have to reimburse MedPay. So that benefit inures to you. If you don't have MedPay, then we look, do you have private health insurance? If you have private health insurance, your private health insurance will pay. You may have a copay or deductible, okay? But beyond your copay and deductible, your private health insurance will pay. At the end of the day, we'll collect all of those bills, the retail value of those bills from the at-fault driver, and we may or may not have to reimburse your health insurance depending upon the circumstances. That's a much more in-depth conversation we can have with you individually based on your particular case. But we like medical payments coverage first, health insurance. If you don't have private health insurance, but you're eligible for government health insurance, whether that's Medicare or Medicaid, or it could be through military insurance. If you have any eligibility for government benefits, we want you to use those in the hierarchy. They're the kind of third down. And again, they will make a payment. You may have a copay, you may have a deductible. At the end of the day, we'll collect the retail value of those services from the at-fault, and we will have a reimbursement obligation to Medicare or to Medicaid or to CHAMPA or to some other military insurance, and that's the reason it's third on the list, because we will have some reimbursement obligation. Health insurance, we may or may not. MedPay, we don't, but that's our hierarchy. If you don't have medical payments coverage, you're not eligible for private health insurance, and you're not eligible for any of the government health insurances, then you have to treat on a lien. And there are medical providers who are in the community that work with either on an individual basis or with some medical lien companies that will provide access to medical care to car accident victims if liability is clear. They'll want to see the police report. They'll want to know what they're betting on, right? They're going to want to know that you have an ability later to recover the money to pay them back, and they will actually provide medical care to you. They will not charge you a copay or a deductible along the way. You will not have to make any self-payments. They will hold those bills until the end of the case. We'll make the recovery from the at fault, but then we absolutely will have to pay those medical expenses back. And you generally, if you're working on a lien, you're going to have to pay back the retail value of those expenses. So whatever we recover from the at fault for your medical expenses is going to have to go to pay back those lien holders. When we're dealing with liens, we want to make sure that the bills are reasonable in amount, and we need to make sure everybody understands what the reimbursement obligation is going to be, because it's real. And at the end of the case, we want to make sure that when we recover the money, that there's enough money to pay that lien holder back. It's really the last place we want to go on our hierarchy of who's paying for medical bills. But I hope you understand there's a lot of availability. We can generally, we can find a way through one of these insurance products to make sure that you get the care that you need in the short term. At the end of the day, we're going to recover that from the at-fault driver, and we may or may not have from very significant reimbursement obligations with a lien to no reimbursement obligations if you're at the top of the hierarchy with your medical payments coverage. I hope that helps you, and feel free to contact our law firm with any additional questions about this. We want to be able to help you, and if you have other ideas for videos that would be helpful to you as a client, please let us know that as well. We're trying to provide these as a service to you so that you have a resource to go to, so that you have the available information that will help you get through this process. Thank you.